I'm gonna do a talk from my favourite book of the Bible. It's the book of Ruth. It's the weirdest story. It should never have made it into the Bible. It's a story about two women in a time of patriarchy. And one's called Ruth, obviously, and the other one's called Naomi. But this is really about Naomi. It's her story. And I'm just going to read the first few verses of the book of Ruth. And then I want to try and get you into the story in very quick fashion because I don't have long. It says, in the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem in Judah went to live in the country of Moab, he and his wife and two sons. The name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife Naomi, and the names of his two sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem in Judah. And they went into the country of Moab and remained there, but Elimelech died. And Naomi was left with her two sons. They took Moabite wives, and the name of one was Orpah, and the other was Ruth. And when they had lived there for 10 years, Mahlon and Chilion also died. So the woman was left without her two sons or husband. Then she started to return with her daughters-in-law from the country of Moab because she'd heard that there was food in Israel. So she set off from the place where she'd been living with her two daughters-in-law, and they went on their way to go back to the land of Judah. But Naomi said to her two daughters-in-law, "Go back, each of you, to your mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me." Okay, so I want to just talk you through what the big story is in Ruth, and just if we look at the structure there, that'll be really helpful. The book of Ruth begins with Naomi going to the land of Moab with her husband and two sons, and they all die. Okay? And so it begins with death. And on the way to Bethlehem, Ruth makes a covenant with her. They end up in Bethlehem, and I'll talk you through all this. Then they end up in the fields of Moab. Then Boaz goes down the road to Bethlehem. He makes a covenant, and then at the end of the book, they say, Naomi has a son. Start of the story, she loses her two sons. At the end of the book, she actually has a grandson. But what we're being told here is Naomi has got a life back. God's given her life back, given her future. And this son will be the grandfather of King David, ancestor of Jesus. There is a lot of stake in this story. And God doesn't turn up hardly at all, except kind of indirectly all the time. And sometimes in our lives, we look for direct intervention, and all we get is indirect intervention, and it is annoying as hell. We really want the voice of God from heaven, and we get a nudge from the person sitting next to us. What is with God that he kind of just doesn't turn up the way we want him to? And for Naomi, the story begins in a really interesting way. It says, it was in the time of the judges. Now, if there is a bunch of loser leaders in the Bible, it's the judges. We've got Samson, we've got Gideon. They all created more crap than health, okay? And it was in the time of the judges, the charismatic talent created a huge mess. I just want to suggest we're in the time of the judges again. It is no surprise that when you look around the world, we have a talent for appointing judges of charismatic gifting, all style, sometimes not even style, but no substance. Okay? Which is why there is like unprecedented migration in the world as people move away from the leaders that are destroying their countries. So we're in a time of migration. But you have to say the church is not guilty. But we're a bit guilty too. We've valued charismatic leaders. And the newspapers are full of their fall. Okay? So we've joined into the culture of the world by valuing style over substance. And Naomi is living in the time of the judges, and what happens is migration. Migration's happening in our world. Migration is happening. The majority of people don't go to church anymore. They don't go anywhere. They've migrated out. They've gone to Moab. And this is what happens. Elimelech looks at Israel and thinks, I don't want to be in this place anymore. It is not safe here. So he goes to Moab. And Moab symbolizes the world. He goes back to the world. He crosses the Jordan and goes the other way. He unbecomes Israel. He unbecomes the church. The Jordan was their baptism. He reverses his baptism, takes his family with him. We're seeing a bit of that at the moment. People choosing unbelieving, go to the next slide, to be unbelieving and to head to the fields of Moab. Moab was an interesting place. It was the only thing in the law, the only country in the law that they weren't allowed to marry. But he takes his sons and they marry in Moab. Okay? There's a story behind that, I won't go into it. But it was regarded as an awful place. Their worship was orgies. Okay? For an innocent Israelite, it was very attractive. Okay? So it was an orgy worship, and their worship was child sacrifice. They burnt them in the fire to Shemosh. And Elimelech, whose name means God is king, takes his family there. Can't fathom it, can you? But the amount of people who leave church and sacrifice their children to the world staggers me. Okay, it's normative behaviour now that we don't protect our kids, we promote our kids into the world. Okay, and the church is as guilty as this as anyone. Okay, and so they cross the Jordan, they go to Moab, to the place of death, and death happens. Now, Naomi is probably the innocent party in this. It's very clear that it's Elimelech's decision, and he takes his family, so she's a victim. She's even more of a victim when her sons die, and she is left without any way of supporting herself. There is no super there. I just want to say I've just applied for super. Very excited. I'm going to be a gold card guy soon. I just want to apologise to all the Gen Zs and Gen Xs and everybody who's disgusted with me. Okay, but I have worked for this. Okay, so she's got no means of support, and here's what she hears. She hears there's food in Israel. And she decides she'll head back to Israel. Let's just call this practical atheism. I got no options. Heck, they got some food there, I'll go there. Some of you may have turned up today because you've got no food options. You've got no means of support. You might be here purely because of that. This is Naomi. I don't know if it's God, don't really give a damn, but I hear there's food. And this is how desperate the world is right now. There is no food out there. There is nothing that can sustain hope and meaning in our world now. Welcome to Moab. Welcome to the culture of death. Okay? So she decides to go back, and because her two daughters-in-law, Orpah, who I suspect somebody named Oprah after and just had an issue. Anyway, Orpah and Ruth go with her because they're her family. They bought into her family, and Naomi looks at them as she hits the road, and she thinks, I'm going to Israel with Moabite woman. This is not going to go well for me. And not only that, she doesn't really want anyone who's going to be a demand. And so she tries to give them the flick. You ever tried to give people the flick? You've got to a point in your life, a depressed point in your life, where you just want the whole world to get stuffed. And just stay away from me. And so she gets rid of Orpah, but Ruth is really annoying. Like, she holds on to her, clings. When you're really making an art form of depression, you don't want somebody to cling to you. You just want to be left alone. How many of you have been there? Okay? And this is what Ruth says. They're on the road to Bethlehem, and Ruth says to this, do not press me to leave you or to turn back from following you. Wherever you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die. There you will be buried. May the Lord do thus and so to me, and more as well, if even death separates me from you. Isn't that an amazing thing to do and say to the person who is trying to get rid of you? And what's really interesting is after Ruth says this to Naomi, it says, and then Naomi saw she was determined to go with her, and she said no more to her. What that means is she played no speaks all the way to Bethlehem. That was a very quiet journey where Ruth is saying, I'm sticking with you, and Naomi says, okay, I'm not talking to you. This covenant, I'm going to hold on to you and not let go. Your people will be my people, is a wild conversion. Ruth is choosing what Naomi, the person who's modeled this to her, has rejected. She is saying, I am going to be a believer and I'm going to hold on to you no matter what. I led a church. I was a Pentecostal by accident. I'm now an Anglican by ambush. But I went through burnout and I was in depression for a couple of years. And I was profoundly angry at God for how it had turned out and how I'd been treated. And that anger spilled out, and when I could talk to God, but that anger spilled out in different ways until I did the most brutal prayer I could ever pray to just tell God how crappy He was at being God. And sometimes you just have to do that, and God's got very big shoulders, and He handles it really well. I felt I was going to be struck down, but it was a little bit of a turning point where I spilled my guts. And God held on to me. God's good at clinging when we're utterly unlovely. There were two people who every week insisted on praying with me. They held on to me, and I really didn't ever want to see them that day. You know, I really didn't want, because I had nothing to pray to God, you know? And they just hung in there, and I'm here today because of them. When I moved to Tauranga, Holy Trinity had bled out. They'd had a period of about 10 years where pretty much a whole generation had left. And I inherited a really aged church when I came here, not because I wanted to come to Tauranga, because I was very clear to God that I had no interest in coming here. I know you like it. I don't. Quite like the people, though. People are pretty cool here. But anyway, that's another story. And so for 6 months, I just went around and listened to people's hurt and said sorry for things I hadn't done, but the church had done. And it changed the narrative. You know, it takes time to change the narrative. But it may be that you are meant to be a part of clinging to some people who are seriously ugly at the moment, seriously hurt, and don't know how to get out of it. That was Naomi. Didn't know how to get out of her pain. If life has really dished you up some serious crap, God is good at holding on to us. God's really good at this and bringing us to our right self. Because sometimes you just lose you in the mess, okay? But your instinct is to alone it. Your instinct is not to move towards people. Your instinct is to move away. So Naomi's covenant is a changer. The other thing I want to touch on is that Ruth makes choices when Naomi can't, and Ruth goes out to the field to glean. And I just want to read the last bit that I want to touch on. She goes out to the field because they've got nothing. They need to just get the leftovers from the harvest. And it says, just then Boaz came from Bethlehem, and he said to the reapers, "The Lord be with you." And they answered, "The Lord bless you." Do you want to have an Anglican moment? Okay, so, your answer is the Lord bless you. The Lord be with you.
The Lord bless you.
Welcome to the Anglican Church. This is what we do. And then it says, then Boaz said to his servant who was in charge, "To whom does this young woman belong?" And the servant who was in charge of the reapers says, "She is a Moabite and came with Naomi from Moab. She came early and has not stopped working until this moment." And what Boaz does, he invites her to the meal table. Ruth is in the field with all these people, and Boaz sees her. Who have you noticed? Who have you noticed that you're meant to invite to the table? If you don't notice anybody, if you come here and you don't notice anybody, you're not family yet. Family notices. Notices when someone's pain, no speaks. Notices pain. It's not the job of the pastors to notice. It's yours, if you're family. And Boaz does an amazing thing. He shows kindness to Ruth, who's an outsider. It's everybody's job to see the outsider. It's your job. And to bring into family. And he invites her to the meal table and provides for her when she has nothing. The shame of having nothing to offer a community is profound. We've lost the ability to bring people to the meal table. We're so damned busy, and we like going to cafes because we know we can leave and get rid of them. Whereas if we invite them home, they may not leave. Hospitality is not the hospitality industry. It's you in your home showing kindness. And if your home is unconverted right now, if it's a really hard place to get into, change. Boaz changed their life. First of all, through Ruth's covenant, and then next, what happens is Boaz's covenant, he marries into this mess. But it all starts at the meal table. So I want to suggest to you that this whole concept of covenant, that last slide, please, would be great. It's the Hebrew word is Khesed. It means faithfulness or loyalty. That God is loyal. He is faithful and true. And what changes our lives is when we experience that covenant loyalty, faithful and true. It's called Khesed. And I believe you're going to mess with it a little bit. Tony mentioned you're going to do something on that. So that's about all I've got to say. If you're coming out of Moab, it's only a culture of death. There is nothing there to sustain you. Come back. Come back over the Jordan. Even if it means you have to get rebaptized. Who gives a damn? Let's just get back in the family. Get back in the family. And let people hold on to you and accept that actually aloning is not an option. The only way back is to eat food together, find home together, all that sort of stuff. Church services are nice, but the real stuff is the home. Hey, Lord, bless these guys. May they be a fruitful branch. And Lord, every person who's still kind of coming back, who might be in depression or burnout, Lord, may we find that you hold tight to us, and may we discover people who don't let go. May we find the joy of the meal table, because the gospel's really simple. It's just finding you with other people. So Lord, bless this community, and amen.